Hi, this is Heidi Gaiman from ilovemyshepherd.com with another Mental Health Monday. We are in our series about emotions, and today we're going to talk about the spectrums of emotion that we categorize under scared and sad. Scared and sad. And so let's start with sad. Let's start with that one. I want to help you maybe distinguish a little bit between this spectrum of emotion that we call sad and then the clinical experience of what we call depression, or and there is obviously some spectrum in that, like moving to depressed in stages even, but just like grief, which we are going to tackle on the blog in a few weeks, so look for a special post on grief. There will also be kind of some roller coasters of all of our emotion in each category. So I don't think that depression ever looks just, like I was sad and then I was depressed and then I got better. No, a lot of times there's like this rockiness to any kind of mental health diagnosis, certainly, but then also like within each spectrum of emotion. So if we look at sad, we have a huge spectrum, right? We can feel blue, we can feel gloomy. Other words I wrote down is like, we can feel serious. That even like boredom, I think we can like mistake within the spectrum of sadness. And to some degree, that's okay. These are just words we honestly kind of make up to explain what's going on inside of us. My kids and I are currently reading a book that it's not necessarily entirely kid-friendly, so I have to do a little bit of adjusting to it, but it's a book written by Eden Shear, who is on the middle, and I'm sure she does other awesome stuff, but that's who I'm most familiar with is Sue Heck. And so for each day of the year, she went through and just made up a new word for some emotions she was experiencing that she couldn't define. And I don't know if like other people submitted things too, because it's really fun to read these different ideas that she comes up with. And that's the same for us. Like the word sad in itself, the word bored in itself are made up concepts to describe how we are internally feeling. So you can make up new concepts if you want to some degree, if that's helpful. That's part of building emotional granularity, is searching for words that describe what we're experiencing. And so I'm gonna have a tip related to that in sadness in just a minute. But first, let's consider then this thing we call depression. And so I'm gonna give you some of the criteria for depression in mental health diagnosis, and maybe that will help. But we even have this thing we call a depressed mood, or in depressed mood, you can guess what all is included in there. That depression that push down, I guess. Depression, and even the word kind of describes how people experience this thing called depression, where there is some kind of weight, there is something pushing someone to be, more stagnant in a way that is really interfering with functioning. That's the main thing for any mental health diagnosis is this interfering with your functioning? If it's sadness that you can walk through, that's fine. That's a life experience. If it's sadness that is interfering with functioning, interfering with our abilities to take care of our hygiene, interfering with our sleep cycle, interfering with our relationships, interfering with our schoolwork or our work, then we want to really consider seeking help. And seeking help for anything is fine, whether it's a clinical diagnosis or not. But there is this place where it begins to be too much weight, too much pressure on us, and we have a hard time functioning. So a depressed mood or total loss of interest. This happens most days, most moments of those days for 2 weeks or more. That's when we kind of know oh, this isn't quite right, which is kind of a short period of time if you think about the fact that we usually wait a long time to get help, don't we? So 2 weeks or longer, most days, most moments, we're experiencing these feelings. Eating and sleeping changes are pretty big. There also is usually some fatigue, and you don't have to have all these criteria. And please, this is not a diagnostic thing right here. Know that. We are not here to diagnose people. I have a little what do they call it, disclosure on my podcast, and I'll give it here, that I am not here to provide mental health counseling in this particular circumstance. I'm just helping provide some education and some access to some education. Please seek help in your local area with mental health counselors. If you need some help rooting through what kind of counselor you need and things like that, I can help with that. But know that this itself is not counseling right now. That's important legally. But also some other things that people experience that report with depression is that fatigue, feelings of worthlessness, or inappropriate guilt, which is, we all experience guilt, right? But where we're placing it on ourselves, where it's not ours, or we're placing it on ourselves so frequently, or the largeness of it for us is, really, really interfering with functioning again. Also concentration issues, fuzziness, that can weigh in for a clinical depression diagnosis, or suicide ideation, we call it. These thoughts of darkness, thoughts where maybe we say to ourselves, like, it would be better if I ended it, things like that. That's suicide ideation, and that is interfering with our functioning, right? That's interfering with our internal functioning as well as our external functioning. And then also any kind of attempts at suicide. So that's like clinical depression. And again, you don't have to have all those criteria to meet it. But if you hear some of those things sound familiar for you or for someone you love or care about, just like in suicide, we say, ask the questions. Ask the questions. You'll never feel guilty for asking the questions. Will it be awkward? Maybe. Will it be awkward for myself if I'm experiencing some of the things and I go seek help and they're like, well, it sounds like you're doing okay. This might just be really normal. And a period of sadness, maybe I can help you walk through. The clinician might say, also okay. Therapy is just good. I like to say that therapy is for wellness. It's okay to get a different diagnosis than you maybe thought was going to happen. There is no shame in that either. There's no shame in getting insight, getting tools, and getting help that we need. Same thing with medication. Like, there's a place for that, whether it's clinical depression or not clinical. So just go ask the questions, go seek help, go ask questions of your family or friends that might need help too. Do you see changes in them? If you have like a gut feeling that's like, their hygiene has changed, maybe their sleep patterns are changing. If you have a gut feeling, go ahead and go ask the questions. It's a good thing. A lot of people also with like employers have an EAP or an employee assistance program. And that's a helpline usually you can call and just ask some questions. Usually so many visits, whether that's for you or your child or someone else you want to ask questions about. Also, you can usually take advantage of that. Or there is, if you are feeling, this weight of depression, the suicide hotline is amazing. The suicide hotline is amazing, and you can call and seek help and just ask questions, and they can help you sort through that, and then you can move on to getting the local help that you need. So start somewhere, I guess, is what I'm saying. Then can we talk about just the experience of sadness, just the experience of tears, just the experience of what we think of so often as a weak emotion, and call it strength. Call it strength in walking into sadness, walking into those spaces that don't feel great. You are strong when you do that. And when we let our body do things like cry, when we let ourselves like stretch, when we feel uncomfortable with the sadness. One of the wisest things a therapist ever told me said, what if it were okay if you were just sad and didn't need to be happy? Wow, right? That is not our cultural language, but I think there's like a turn of the tide, but at the same time, there is a stigma to experiencing sadness, especially at places like work or places that are public. It's okay to go in the bathroom and cry it out. It's okay to like get upset, and there's a lot of sometimes anger wrapped in sadness. Just be like, let whatever your body is telling you it needs to do kind of out, as long as we're not hurting ourselves or other people. But at the same time, you don't have to go do that in secret either. We need relationships as far as our emotions are concerned too. So finding those safe relationships where we can say to someone, I'm feeling sad. And maybe find some people in your life that you can say to, I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to sit with me in this sadness. And that's really the story of grief, is people, you can't fix it, right? We want to fix things so bad. But what if we are just okay with the sadness for a little bit? Note, that's different than clinical depression, where we really do want to seek some help. But at the same time, walking through sadness itself is a good thing of God, I think, a good thing. And he can bring glory into that. Jesus himself was sad. He wept. What a powerful thing that is. And there's this passage I want to read you in 2 Corinthians that I just really love in relationship to sadness. And it is 2 Corinthians 6, 8b. I'm going to start at 8b because there's a beginning of a sentence through 10. We are treated as impostors and yet are true, as unknown and yet well known, known by God. That's me, known by God. As dying and behold we live, as punished and yet not killed, as sorrowful yet also rejoicing, as poor yet making many rich, as having nothing yet possessing everything. And so what I wanted to point out in there is that sorrowful yet rejoicing, sorrowful yet rejoicing. And so we live in that sorrowful yet rejoicing. That is the reality of the Christian walk. And I think being okay with that to some extent is really, really important. Again, different than clinical depression. When I said that's me, I meant that's me, not the scripture. When I said, no, my God, wow, I made that confusing. You're welcome. All right, this is a long Mental Health Monday, but I do want to get to fear and anxiety and that scared spectrum. We could do a whole nother one on that too, and maybe we will sometime. But I just want to point out that, again, there's a whole breadth of emotion wrapped up into this. I have a podcast if you want to hear my theories on the differences between fear, anxiety, and worry, because I think that's really important that we distinguish between those. And currently in the Christian church, we're not. And so I think in so many spheres, we need to understand a little bit of some differences, especially control-wise, in what we're going to do about those things. So clinical anxiety. Again, this isn't counseling, but here are some criteria for clinical anxiety. If they sound familiar to you, it's time to maybe call someone to get some help, to get some resources. Presence of that feeling of anxiety, what you determine as the feeling of anxiety for over 6 months. So it's a little bit longer term, right? Is it interfering with my functioning? That's your question again. Is it interfering with my functioning? I have a very serious relationship with anxiety I've had my whole life. And so that's always my first question is how's my functioning? Am I able to kind of walk through the anxiety and, find some tools on my own to deal with it, or do I need some help? And it seems excessive to you. This is self-determined to you, or sometimes asking your spouse or people you live with is really helpful, because sometimes they have a little bit heartbeat on it closer than you do. So does it seem excessive? Is it interfering with your daily life? Again, your functioning. It feels out of control. And if I could have anything to define anxiety, it would be that statement. It feels out of control. It feels like something I can't do anything about, right? That is anxiety at its core. There's a physical or a cognitive interruption. So my thinking is different. I'm not able to think past this anxiety, or some physical health symptoms that go alongside it. And noting that anxiety is not worry. And so I really encourage you to look at I Love My Shepherd, the podcast page, the Truth About Mental Health series. We have a whole series on anxiety, fear, and worry. And there's also social anxiety, which is a little bit different, and panic attacks, and OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is also grouped in these things. So some things we can talk about at another time. We have so much. I've gone for so long. So if you have any particular questions about sadness or scared and those spectrums of emotion, please throw them up and we'll try to address them. We only have 2 more episodes in our emotion for the rest of the month of March in our Emotion Mental Health Mondays. We're going to talk about peace and joy, and we're also going to talk about some cultural emotion words and looking at some other emotion words that we don't have in our English language that I think might be really useful for us. if you have particular questions about, because we're moving so fast on anxiety, especially, feel free to throw them up. I forgot to mention phobias. That's a very real thing. There's like clinical diagnoses for phobias, and there's definite therapeutic methods that can help with phobias. I'm going to give you one tip for anxiety today. And we could go on about this forever, but again, I lead you to the podcast for more on that, to save time. But like, if you feel anxious, if you have that internal feeling where you're just like, it really feels kind of overwhelming, deep breathing is definitely helpful. It helps reset our brains. Please do that. Breath changes things. It brings us back to that kind of presence, that don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has enough problems of its own, but I don't think we can like necessarily control our thoughts, a lot of times, and that's what one of the differences in anxiety and worry is. So instead, just taking a minute to take some breaths, returning all that blood throughout your system, giving your brain the most blood that it can have to kind of settle down is really helpful. Same thing for your heart and your nerves. And then also, I have a hard time when I feel anxious. I have a hard time like, I think I'll just breathe. Like, that'll solve it. We're not here to fix it all the time, right? But at the same time, like, I can't a lot of times do that cognitive switch. Like, we think we can control things and we can't necessarily control them. And so walking through it, being like, hello, anxiety, just, waving at your anxiety as it goes by. And then also, trying to create saliva in your mouth. That again is kind of like breath, and it resets your system, gives your brain a little signal that says, oh, don't forget, we need to function here. And so that can help just take the anxiety and help your body focus on other things, and returning its system back to, a little bit more of a calm state. All right, so thanks for joining me for this extra long Mental Health Monday. I probably shouldn't have put scared and sad into one, because I think it's kind of a big one. It has a lot of cultural stigma, and so we need to like really talk through it. But if you have questions, like I said, throw them up on here or on YouTube or at I Love My Shepherd on the About Me page. Feel free to send me questions or whatever. You can also catch us over on Instagram. We'll have a short conversation about it over there, and I do throw some room for questions up on my Instagram stories at I Love My Shepherd community over there. All right, thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.